Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. I got to tell you, I am so pleased today. I get to talk to one of my all-time favorite people that I've ever had on the show because he's a godlike individual in my book because he's been doing this work that he's doing since 1979 when I was just a wee pup. And he's been endorsed by people like Jenny McCarthy and Dr. Wayne Dyer, bless his soul. And I really wish I had the opportunity to meet him before he passed. But David, you've been doing this a long time. You are a coach. You're a teacher. What don't you do well?
Kevin, you know what? That's a great question to start with. The only thing I don't do is politics. And I'm being really serious. I don't touch politics. I've had hosts try to get me to go in that direction, and I just don't go there. But besides politics, it's wide open. We have 15 books out now, Kevin, which is mind blowing to think about. And, one of the things the open of your show is awesome. And I want to make this comment because it really is awesome. And what the open of the show says is that you are here for a purpose, even though you did it in questions. We can take that question and turn it into a statement. You're here for a purpose. Your purpose on earth is to find that purpose. And then to, as so many people have said, is to give it away, to maximize your potential. And, speaking of Wayne Dyer, he's the one that got me into giving stuff away. Right now, Kevin, on our website, we have 5 books that are absolutely free. Of our 15 books out, you can get 5 of them for free at the website. Why are we doing that? That comes from Wayne Dyer. In 1990, the first time I interviewed him, at the end of the segment, I had just started my nationally syndicated radio show in 1990. He was one of my first guests, believe it or not. I was blown away that we got him. And I asked him after the show, I said, hey, Dr. Wayne, is there any advice you can give me to help me really grow, to help me really explode this career? I've been doing it now for 11 years. It's 1990, and I want it to just continue to grow. And he said, yeah. He goes, yeah, David. He goes, this is great. I'll be back in a couple months. We can talk more about it. But the very first thing I'm going to tell you is to give your best material away. And Kevin, I looked at him and I said, what? And now this is before computers, right? 1990. Right. So it wasn't like you could jump online and give something away for free. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, if I give my best stuff away for free, people won't hire me as a counselor or as an executive coach or as an anything. He said, wait till you see what's going to happen next. He said, you put something together for free, you wait. And sure enough, we decided to put a newsletter together, right? We didn't know what we were doing. We had no clue. But within a couple months, we had 2,000 subscribers that we were mailing. My mom and dad were putting the newsletter into envelopes and mailing them from their kitchen table. I mean, I swear, some of the stories that we have of people that have been in this business a long time are pretty, unique and amazing. But I found that Wayne was right. When you have the confidence that you can give away books and you're not worried about not selling books, that means that you're in the right space. And I really love giving things away. For anyone that wants to potentially work with me, we give away a 20-minute phone session to make sure we're a good energy match. So I think giving away helps people. And what that said, what really triggered me, and you're open, was that thing about purpose. When we find our purpose, we are not working anymore. That is the most beautiful thing I can tell you. It's worth searching. It's worth looking. It's worth taking the risk and leaving this job to go to that job, or this career to go to that career, or this small business to go to that one, because we have to find that space where it isn't work anymore. When Kevin is on the air, I'm going to speak for Kevin right now, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but he's not working. He may have to work a little bit ahead of time with, guests that he doesn't know or hasn't had on before. He may have to go through and read about them. But when he's on air, he's in bliss. Am I correct, Kevin?
Oh, it is. It energizes me.
Absolutely.
It really makes my life worth living. And because I enjoy it so much, and I enjoy talking to people like you that have been out there and doing some extraordinary stuff. And it fills my heart. You have those, you ever have those moments when you're doing something and it just fills your heart with bliss and with love, and it really makes you feel alive.
Yes. Yes. Oh, absolutely. And so when you see Kevin talking about how much he loves the show, helping him feel more alive in life, that's what I want for everyone to feel. And it's not just for David and Kevin and for Wayne Dyer. Everyone can find their purpose, and your purpose doesn't have to be some star-studded thing. A lot of times people find their purpose by doing volunteer work. A lot of times people find their purpose by going in a direction they never thought would work for them. They never ever thought that they would be a good teacher, and they turn out to be a phenomenal teacher. But if you're in a position where you're not happy, if you're in a position where you don't feel that you're utilizing your full potential, this is the time to sit down, maybe get some friends together, brainstorm, hire a coach, hire a counselor, do something. But, life can be very short. It can end today. It can end tomorrow. It can end in 40 years. None of us have any clue whatsoever what's going on. But the purpose that I'm saying this for is that I want those 10 years or 2 months or 40 years to be filled with joy, or that you wake up and say, I get to do this, not I have to do this work, but I get to do this work. That's the bliss. That's what we're looking for. More and more people in this world, we need this. I mean, there's so much, Kevin, this in the media. There's so much negativity. If you're absorbing this negative media stuff, which means you're listening to something other than Kevin's show, and I've told you before, the last time I was on, I said, do not listen to any other show but Kevin's. I don't know how many times I got to tell you guys this. I come on to remind you. That's why I'm here, is to remind you to listen to the show. But, as you have the evening news on in the background, don't think you're getting away with anything. That crap is getting stuck in your subconscious mind, which is going to probably turn your attitude south. And as most people know, when you get together with people today, the first topic of conversation is something negative. Do you believe the president did this? Do you believe that the vaccine did that? Everyone's talking about all this negativity. And then we have Kevin, who has found his purpose, who's here to bring people on to help you, his audience, grow. I'm only here to help you grow. That's the whole purpose I'm on earth. And I'm going to ask you to take a big step back. Evaluate your life on paper, not in your head. Evaluate your life on paper. So you'd write down my career on a scale of 1 to 10. Are you a 1? Are you a 9? Are you a 5? What is it? If you're a 6 or below, I would start evaluating what would bring me an 8. What type of a career would bring me to an 8? But you've got to do this evaluation on paper, because your brain is going to screw with you. The minute you start talking to yourself and say, well, I really need to find a job. I just wrote down I'm at a 2 at this job. David asked me this question. I wrote down I'm a 2. I've really got to start looking. If you don't put it on paper, I'll tell you what's going to happen next. Within half an hour to an hour, well, at least I get benefits here. And a day goes by and we say, well, at least, I've got a friend I can eat lunch with there. If I go to a new job, I may not know of anyone. And all of a sudden we start coming up with excuses that limit ourselves from living that life of joy and being on purpose. So again, if you're a 6 or under, I would highly recommend that you sit down and think about, what other direction could I go in? Ask a family member, ask someone you trust, ask a good friend, what would I be good at? Kevin, going back early in my career, and then this has to be in the 80s, probably maybe 82, 83, something like that. I had an assistant that worked with me, and I had an office in my home, and my radio studio with Westwood One was in my home. And I mean, it was just unbelievable. It was almost like COVID back in 1982. I never left my house. I never did. It was great. I did all my sessions because we didn't have Zoom or Skype or anything back then. I did everything via phone, and it was phenomenal. One day she turns and looks at me and she says, how come you haven't written any books? And I said, what are you talking about? She goes, David, you are so creative. I hear you on the phone with your clients. I see the way you tell stories to my little girls. You're a storyteller. Why aren't you writing books? And I said, oh my God, I'm an athlete, right? I work in sports psychology. I was an athlete in college. I mean, I've been told my whole life that I'm not a creative person. I'm great as an athletic person. I'm great to help people with their mindset, but I'm not creative. And she said, I really think you need to think about that. She said, I'm seeing nothing but pure creativity. Now, here's someone that saw me in a way I couldn't see myself. And what I'm hoping is if you take this exercise seriously, which I hope you do, you spend 8 hours a day minimal If you're in a place a grade 6 or under, on a scale of 1 to 10, you're spending 8 hours in a place that may not be healthy for you, may not be good for your mind, body, spirit. And this is where we need to take action. If you take action and it doesn't work, it's better than staying stuck. Then, because if it doesn't work and you take action, you can take another step and another step. But if all you're going to do is throw up your hands and surrender and say, this is the best I can do. Yes, I'm rating it at 2, but I'm not going to be able to go any further. That's where we make the greatest mistake in the world. This world can be filled with joy. If
David, I've got the perfect analogy for that.
Go for it.
Have you ever heard of the term golden handcuffs?
Yes.
I drove a bus for 12 years in Seattle.
Okay.
And so I was a bus driver.
Yep.
And a lot of guys, and it paid well.
Mm-hmm.
There were lots and lots of guys who absolutely, I don't know the last time you rode a bus, but there's lots of guys that are driving a bus. They never have a smile on their face. Right. They never have anything nice to say. They look like they are one step away from beating somebody up, or because they're not happy.
Yeah.
But the money is too good to walk away in some cases, so they don't take the step of saying, why am I really here? What am I here to do? What is my passion? Because this ain't it.
Yeah.
And they don't look at it that way. And so if you have a job, to just amplify what David said, if you have a job where you feel like you're stuck and you've got golden handcuffs on, they pay well, but you can't leave and you can't do what your heart is telling you to do, then you need to rethink it. And David's is absolutely right. Write it down.
Yeah.
Write down what you're doing.
We really do, Kevin. It has to be in writing. The brain is too tricky. If it's not in writing, it'll justify, rationalize, and pretty much get you out of change really quickly, because the brain looks at change as frightening, threatening. The subconscious mind wants you to stay in that job that isn't successfully fulfilling you, because that's what we've done for 10, 20, 30 years. So we put that pattern into the subconscious. Same thing as drinking alcohol or anything else. You do it long enough and the subconscious just says, okay, this is the best we can do. This is what we've been always doing this, so let's keep doing it. But we do have to shatter that. There are so many people in this world that have taken major risks, that they've left high-paying careers or medium-paying or low-paying careers to go into something they really enjoy. I remember a number of years ago working with a guy, and he had a good job. He worked in an office and he had great benefits and everything else, but he was an outdoor guy. He hated being inside. And for 15 years, he's working this job inside and just can't stand it. And the problem was his attitude. He would come home from work in a bad mood. He'd leave for work in a bad mood. And finally, his wife just said to him one day, hey, listen, enough of this already. If you hate it that bad, quit. We'll figure a way to make ends meet and to get food for the kids and all that kind of stuff. But, this has been going on for years. And it's no fun for any of us to have you in the house. We almost look forward to you leaving in the morning because you're always such a bad mood. Now here's a wife that didn't say anything for 15 years. And then she finally just said, I've got to tell you, you need help. And I started working with the gentleman. Well, the greatest news in the world is I asked him to do a simple exercise, is write down all of the hobbies that you love that could become a job. And the very first thing he wrote down, which is going to make some people laugh, he said, cutting grass. And I said, tell me about it. He goes, oh, God, David, I'd love to cut my grass. He said, I have a big yard. I go mindless. He said, my mind goes blank. He said, I even use a push mower. He said, because I want to be out there in the sun, but I want my mind to relax. And it's one of the greatest things to do. And I said, well, what else do you like to do? He said, I love to landscape. Well, you know where this is going, Kevin, right?
I do.
And it was just a matter of, I think it was about 6 months, for him to make the plan, to slowly get the equipment necessary to start a one-man landscaping company. And he's doing it today, and he's happier than he can ever be. He's making about half of the income that he was making when he was in the office. But what his wife did is that she went out and picked up a part-time job. And so now they're basically back to about the same salary. So they didn't have to suffer greatly. Kids didn't go without food because dad was out cutting grass. They ended up being really good working together. And she has said so many times how much gratitude she has that he actually took the risk. Because too many people, Kevin, as you mentioned, they don't take the risk. They've got those handcuffs on. They stay where they're not wanted, needed, or where they don't want to be. And that's just the spelling of disaster.
Well, isn't it true? You've been doing this a long time.
Mhm.
And if you are happy in doing what you are doing, that happiness tends to radiate out. It can affect your wife, your relationship, your
Yeah.
family, your kids, all kinds of people that you would love to be a positive role model for. That right now, if you hate your job, you hate your existence,
Yeah.
your Monday morning actually starts at Sunday afternoon when you start thinking about how crappy it's going to be tomorrow. That's
Yes.
no way to live.
No, Kevin, you just nailed it. When you said that, it reminded me when I was a kid in school, how Sunday nights my anxiety would begin because I had to go to school on Monday, right? And that's no different than many people how they're feeling today. They just what you said, Sunday afternoon, early evening, they're going, oh, damn it all. I got to, get ready for work tomorrow. I got to get this done. And it isn't any way to live. And I understand, especially in the time of inflation, people really nervous about their money, Kevin. I'm not telling people just to, give your 2 weeks notice tomorrow and you don't know what the heck you're doing. We do have to plan. And we do have to have that plan in writing. And I would highly recommend to talk to people and to get some ideas. Oh, and this just came into my mind. There's an organization for free across the country called SCORE, and it stands for Service Corps of Retired Executives. If you are in a business that you don't like, you can work with a retired executive for free. The government, the Small Business Administration created this years and years ago. As a matter of fact, in 1980, when I opened my first business, I used a SCORE executive to help me because I didn't know what the hell I was doing, So, like SCORE, you can go in and say, hey, I want to talk to an executive about changing careers. I don't even know where to begin. So, as we're talking, more ideas will come up that I can share with your audience, Kevin. The most important thing, though, is that if you find yourself on that scale that I said under 6, get that pen and paper out as soon as our show is over with tonight. Start writing down what your favorite hobbies are that could become a part-time career. Start writing down what it was if you had an opportunity to move in a different direction. And sometimes it's moving laterally. Maybe it's not even leaving the company. Maybe you say, I just hate this position. I'm going to go into human resources and say, hey, is there somewhere you can move me laterally that I'll have more fun? I really enjoy X and I'm doing Y. There's all kinds of different creative ways that we can find our purpose and find a career, a job that we really enjoy. But it's not going to happen sitting on your hands and wishing for it or hoping that something's going to come up from out of the blue. We're going to have to do a little work.
Now, David, I want to ask you because it seems to me that because we are a energetic being, a spiritual being, in a physical body,
Yeah.
and that we, in my frame of reference, I think we've got a whole team of people and entities that are working with us on the other side. And when we start to say things like, I really want to do this, I want to change, show me what you got, show me where to go, what to
Oh,
do. Don't you find that things just kind of open up?
I love it, Kevin. I love what you're saying right now. Oh my God, I got the greatest smile on my face, and I agree with you. 3 years ago, my mom died. 2 years ago, my father died, and I was one of the very fortunate. And it's not a lot of Americans can say this. And so, if you weren't raised with a loving mother and father, all I can say is I am so sorry. I know many people were not raised in that environment. They were beaten, they were molested, they were raised in the world of addiction, whatever it might be. And I'm so sorry you didn't get a better start. But you can turn it all around still. Let's not stay, bashing parents. We are adults now and we need to move forward. But when my mom died and then my dad died, I've been doing very deep spiritual work, as you can pretty much imagine, for 45 years now, as long as I've been in this career.
Yep.
And I'm going to share with you what I do, and I'm going to share it in a way that was surprising as heck to me. But in 1980, one of my mentors gave me the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Great book.
It's a great book. In the book, he talks about how he created a mental mastermind group for business. And what he would do is that in the morning, and there's 3 chapters in his Think and Grow Rich that are dedicated to this. This is how serious he took it. So in the morning, he would sit in his bed and he would imagine calling in Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Edison, Ford, all of these executives that had passed on. And he would sit around and say, Mr. Lincoln, I don't know how to cut our expenses. Our expenses are eating us up from the bottom line. And he would ask a question, and he would go to Thomas Edison and ask a question, or he'd just throw up a question for anyone in the group. As he described it, I'm reading it thinking this guy's either insane or he's really way ahead of things, because I had never heard of a mental mastermind group before. Even though it was early in my career, I've been involved with many mastermind groups where people sit together in a room and talk about problems and challenges and how to overcome them, but not a mental mastermind group. So I started my own. In 1980, I created these business people that I had a lot of respect for. I would bring them into my room every morning. I would ask questions on how do I grow my business? And I was blown away, Kevin, at how many answers I got that made my life so much easier. Now we fast forward. A year after that, I created another mental mastermind group, but this was just for spirituality. This was a spiritual mental mastermind group that you would bring into your room, into your mind, just like he did with his business. You could bring in Christ, you could bring in Buddha, you could bring in Mother Teresa, you could bring in Mother Mary, you could bring in the apostles, whatever religion you're from, it doesn't matter. You could bring in those individuals. You could bring in people from multiple different religious belief systems. And not only can you ask them about how you can decrease your stress, increase your faith, should I learn a new type of meditation? Would deep breathing help me with my stress? You can ask all these different questions. Well, I started teaching it to my clients, Kevin, and then out of the blue, I had no idea this was going to happen. Our latest book came out, Lessen Your Burdens, Lift Your Spirits. It's a mental mastermind spiritual group for people to be able to have individuals, as you called them, entities all around us that are willing and waiting for us to ask for help. Now, I'm going to tell you my philosophy. I have no proof of this, but I happen to believe that those on the other side that want to help us can only help us if they are asked. Now, correct. Can I prove that to be true? No, it's just a gut feeling on my part. When my mom and dad died, well, especially my mom, we'll start with her. I have my mastermind group, and for 10 months, it was absolute hell. I'm up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm in the courtyard of my house because I can't sleep. I'm crying hysterically. My mom and I were so close, so tight. She died a horrendous death of dementia that went on for 4 years. It was hell on her, hell on my father. It was terrible. Every morning I'd go to my spiritual mastermind group and I'd ask them, what can I do to alleviate this? What can I do to lessen some of my grief? What can I do to this? And all of a sudden, my mom died January 15th. On December 23rd of that year, I got a message, and it was very brief in the morning. It said, honor your mother with a garden. And I said, honor my mother with a garden. I could build a garden, sure, but I need more information, right? And that's all I got. Very next day before Christmas, 5:30 in the morning, I get this massive inload or download, whatever you want to call it, of tear up all of the pavers in your courtyard. Dig a huge garden and plant hibiscus flowers for your mother because she loves them so much. I mean, Kevin, it was so in my face. It was so clear that these individuals, these entities wanted me to do something in honor of her. And in that moment, on that day, I'm getting chills right now. I pulled up 216 by 16 inch pavers, 16 inch. These things are freaking heavy. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
200 of them. I carried them by myself to the curb, giving them away to any neighbor that wanted them for free. Within about an hour, they were all gone. As you can imagine, those things are expensive, right? And I started digging. I dug for 12 hours the day before Christmas, the biggest garden I could ever imagine digging. And on Christmas Day, I had gone to Home Depot already, and I had bought a ton of hibiscus, also got a lemon tree and a couple other things just for variety. But the reason I tell that story is, Kevin, I don't think I would have ever come up with that idea on my own, number one. Number two, I never would have had any clue of how incredibly beautiful it would be to my grieving program. Now I came out every day staring at these massive plants and gardens, and it alleviated so much of my sadness because I'm looking at my mother's every day. I'm looking at what I created for mom every day. This is the type of thing that can happen. In the book, I tell a story of a woman who was a client, and I told her, let's create a spiritual mental mastermind group. She had been struggling. Well, she came in saying that she had depression. Within 2 weeks, I said, my love, I have to tell you something, and this is not a bad thing, but let's get real. This is not depression. This is PTSD. post-traumatic stress disorder. What you've gone through in the last 2 years is much deeper than depression. You're agoraphobic, for God's sake, which means she doesn't leave her house. You're on so much medication for sleep, for anxiety, for depression. I said, this isn't depression, this is PTSD. And I really believe this group can help you. Now, just you can choose 2 people or 3 or 4, it doesn't matter. But what I want you to do is choose your 2 or 3 or 4 people, sit down in the morning in your bed, take a big breath, write down a question on a piece of paper, like, what can I do to alleviate the PTSD? What can I do to get out of the house and feel safe? And every morning, Kevin, she comes in the next day and she has 7 pages in front of her. And she said, okay, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And I said, what's going on? She said, so I asked every day and I got the same answer every day. And it doesn't make sense. I said, what's that? She said, well, the answer I got was to get a service dog, an emotional support dog for my PTSD. I said, that sounds brilliant. She goes, David, I hate dogs. And I said, listen, I'm going to tell you something. As much as you might hate dogs, I'm going to trust your group more than trusting you hating dogs. Don't take that as a negative, but you've had the same answer 7 days in a row. Let's give it a shot. I love dogs. I have an emotional support dog that comes into my counseling office every day, for God's sake. Let's really look into it. Within 3 weeks, Kevin, she had a dog. She went to the movies for the first time in 7 years. She went to a restaurant for the first time in 7 years. And the answer came from the book, from the Spiritual Mental Mastermind group. Now, our audience can get the Audible version of this book free at my website, or you can buy the soft cover at Amazon. It's only like $7, $7.95, something like that. But we need these tools, and I'm blown away how you led into this, talking about entities, because I have had conversations with my mom. I've had conversations with my dad.
Me too.
You too. Tell me, Kevin. Tell us, Kevin.
Well, my dad passed away about 12 years ago, 13 years ago. My mom passed away 3 years ago. And my dad he worked for Nordstrom. He had a sizable retirement and stuff. And one of the things that I got was to go back into broadcasting, to do the podcast as a legacy for him, because he was on the other side now and he had changed. He knew now what the things he did wrong in life, the things he did good in life, but he wanted me to do something different and something better. And so both of them are on the other side and they're cheering. They're with my group, my team is what I call them.
Yeah.
And they're over there and they're real excited that I get to do this because it is the legacy that I can leave for them. And they get it.
Beautiful. I love it. And
it's just like the flower garden. I just wanted to say that legacy that you could walk outside your front door and look at that every day.
Yeah.
And that reminded you of your mom, and your mom was right there in the garden shining her face at you.
Absolutely. Oh my God. It was, one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. And who would think that I could be claiming a beautiful experience grieving my mom, right? Like that doesn't, it's oxymoronic. What do you mean you had an incredible experience grieving your mother? That doesn't make sense, but it's what happened. And, after that, I continued to go back to my group. Every book, the title of this book, Lessen Your Burdens, that came from the mental mastermind, spiritual mental mastermind group that I have every morning. Every program that we've created over the since COVID started, we started with helping veterans heal. That was an early morning recommendation from my spiritual mental mind group. Then we went into helping first responders heal. Then we went after helping Americans heal. It continued to expand and I'm blown away. I'm sitting in my bed, in this meditative, very relaxed state. I do prayers before I begin this thing. And then I call all these individuals. Now, I happen to be a little wacko, Kevin. So I probably have 25 in my spiritual mental mastermind group. I'm not short of 25. I'll tell you that. It's at least 25 people. And every day I call them by their name. And every day I welcome them in. And then every day I thank them for all the guidance they've given me since 1981, for gosh sake. And then I say, hey, here's the situation that I'm in. Or sometimes I'll just open it up and I'll say, if there's anyone that has information that like to share with me that I need to know, please feel free to. I'm going to go into meditation. And sometimes in the middle of a meditation, all of a sudden I'll get this idea and I'll go, oh my gosh, I got to write it down. And I'll stop and write it down and then go back into the meditation. But, we look at, mentioned earlier how crazy this world is. And when we look at how much insanity is being broadcast over radio, podcasts, YouTube, regular TV, we need to get away from this stuff. I ask my clients to take the first hour every morning. If they have to start at 30 minutes, that's okay. But the first 30 minutes or hour have to be completely electronic free. We don't roll over the side of the bed and turn over our iPhone to see if we have any messages. We don't go online. We don't turn the TV on. If you want to know what the weather is, look out the window. You don't need to turn the TV on to figure out what it is. Okay. Open a freaking door, for gosh sake. But we want that time to be electronic free. How you start your day means everything.
Oh, it's paramount. Yeah.
Isn't it? Go ahead, Kevin.
You start your day well and things go well. They tend to. You start your week in a crappy mood and you got to go to this crappy. You hit it right at the top of the show. You go to this crappy job. You're angry with the drivers that are on the road. And it can be you can either have a wonderful experience or a not so wonderful experience. And for those of you, I just wanted to say this, David, for those of you who are like, what do you mean downloads and energy and all that stuff? I want to remind you of something. There's a guy, he's 81 years old now. In 1965, he wrote a song called Yesterday. That song appeared in his head from a dream overnight. He had no idea where it came from. He went around for 2 weeks singing the song to people, asking them, where did I hear this from? Who did this? And nobody, John said nobody that he'd heard, and so consequently he finally has, and to this day he doesn't know where that song came from. But it was a download. I believe music is an important part of the other side, and I believe that it was a download from that. We're talking to David Essel. You are just phenomenal, young man. I just love you to pieces. We need to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back, and we're going to talk more with David about his work, about how you can work with him, how he can help you, and where you can pick up some of these free books that he's got. And that, trust me, one of those books that you pick up may change your life. And that's what it's all about. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back, everybody. See, that wasn't too terribly awful. That was only 35 seconds or so, and because I wanted to get back to talking with our friend David Essel, who is been doing this for 40 years. I got to ask you, when you first started, is that none of this was even out there? I mean, a lot of what we're talking about today, you wouldn't have talked about that in 1980 because somebody would have come. The guys in the white coats would have come and taken you away. But times are changing and things are developing, and you're partially responsible for that.
And I'll take that as a compliment.
Please do.
Okay, thank you. By the way, the guys with the white jackets are just outside the door. At the top of the hour, I'll be being taken back home. But I believe, Kevin, first let me make a comment about the spot that just ran. I think it's beautiful. So many dads or men need to learn how to be fathers, or how to be, as the ad says, how to be a dad. There's a big difference. And one of the things we do is we help dads become better dads. It's amazing how many men are not gifted with that emotional connection with their children more often than not, because they didn't get that from their mom and dad, and they're just repeating the generational cycle. But if you're a man and you have children, I would highly recommend go to Amazon and pick up How to Be a Great Dad, or work with a counselor, therapist, or coach or something. There are certain things that people are born with and they're gifted. I mean, some women are incredible mothers. Let's say 80% of women are incredible mothers. And then there's 20% that do not have that mothering skill, that intuition of being a mother, and it isn't necessarily their fault. It could be trauma from childhood. They weren't, again, nurtured the way they needed to be, and they just don't know how to do it, But if you feel you're lacking, and please don't give us that stuff, well, my kids get everything they want. I don't want to hear anything about materialism, because your children want you. Your children want your energy, your love, your time, and they want your validation. They look up to you as a role model. They want you to validate when they do something well. It's not always about criticizing. I work with adults who are perfectionists that came from highly criticized families, moms and dads that were always riding them. An A wasn't enough. A+ had to be good enough. And now they're neurotic adults, completely neurotic. Perfectionism is one of the quickest ways to anxiety that you can ever go. If you want to see what an anxiety is like, try being a perfectionist. They live in anxiety, and they may be used to it, but it's not healthy. And Kevin, if you think about it, going back, 45 years, we used to talk differently about everything you and I are talking about right now. We said perfectionism was great. That everyone should be wanting to be perfect, and now we say that's freaking nonsense. For God's sake, do your best and accept it. But do your best and accept it. We like that. Going back to 1980, I don't think there'd be any conversation that I would have had with you or anyone else on radio or TV that would have been about the really correct way to grieve. And I say that because with my parents passing, I saw that the grieving program I created in around 1990, was the first time I started working in the world of grief, is not relevant anymore. And being with them for 4 years, they were in hospice for 3 years. The suffering was immense. I learned way too much to continue to teach the old way of grieving. So, we completely rewrote the manual. There's so many topics that you and I are talking about. I'll tell you, in 1980, I was a huge fan of the law of attraction. The law of attraction has been around since the 1800s, for God's sake. And that's when I was traveling 40 weeks a year as a speaker. And I just spoke about the law of attraction all the time. And now I don't talk about it at all, because I think a lot of it is all false. I think it's all made up in our heads. People saying that if you think whatever you put out to the universe, it must respond in kind. That's a bunch of BS. I mean, I have yet to meet anyone, Kevin. We'll say this. My book just before the spiritual one that I wrote was for professional athletes, because that's the industry I grew up in. And I wrote a book for professional athletes, but there's not one professional athlete I've ever worked with as a client or interviewed on radio or TV that told me that they got there by thinking their way to the major leagues, that they thought their way to be an all-star catcher. They thought their way to be an all-star quarterback. These people kick butt. They work their tail off. I've yet to meet a doctor or surgeon that said he graduated in 4 years and he just used affirmations to learn how to be a great surgeon, or he used the universe, as people like to say, put this out into the universe. So again, 1980, I was a huge fan of it. 2024, I don't touch it. I don't talk about it anymore, because I don't find it being valid. Is there some valid connection with the law of attraction? Sure. If you work really hard, you greatly increase your chances of being successful.
Well, see, and that's the thing, is that if you can't, it's like they say, put up the vision board.
Yeah.
And I had my vision board up, and then I looked at it 10 years later, and the boat that was, comes from The Secret, the boat that was on the vision board was now in my driveway, and I hadn't even. And it's like, no, I'm sorry.
I know.
If you set a plan and you work it, and you believe that you can do it, and every day you work as hard as you can to achieve it,
yeah,
you may achieve it, but it may not even be in the timeline that you're expecting it. So
thank you.
It could take a lot longer than what you're thinking, and then, but it's not that the universe isn't interested. It's that they got their own timeline, and their timeline is different.
Very. Kevin, I wrote books for 20 years. Now, this is a really important point I'm going to make. I wrote books for 20 years with zero recognition, minimal sales, nothing happening at all. And then I took the risk of my life, and I wrote a book against positive thinking. And people told me that my career was either going to go into the toilet or it was going to explode. That book became our first #1 bestseller. Positive thinking will never change your life, but this book will. So I wrote for 20 years, and this goes right in alignment with your timeline statement. We cannot put a timeline on our success. We can't put a timeline on anything that we have as a goal because things are not permanent. We are not permanent. Things change. You can say, I want to accomplish this in 2 years, but you don't have control. The world isn't going to wait for you to accomplish that in 2 years. You might accomplish it in 6 months, or like me, maybe it was 20 years. But I'll tell you this, after putting in those 20 years, I never, ever thought once about not writing books. Even though we got no recognition, Kevin, there wasn't one time I said, gosh darn it, we only sold 100 books in the last 3 years. Maybe I should do something different. That thought never came to my head. Why? Because it's part of my passion and purpose for being on earth. And if I sell 10 books and it affects a person positively, 1 out of 10, I'm fine with that, because that person will then interact with at least 7 people. And then it goes 7 and 7 and 7, almost like a pyramid scheme. When you accomplish something massive and you put the time and the work into it, and you can then say, look at what I've done. You know, I've gotten this recognition. I've wrote my first book. I have my first book published. It was published a year ago. We sold 2 copies, but I'm happy because I did something that so many people talk about and never do. Now let me write another one and see if that happens, you know? And if you remember Stephen King's story with his first book, Carrie, you know, it's a story that's been told over and over and over again. He kept getting these rejections. So the whole book would come back. He'd mail it out to a publishing company and they'd send it back with a big red X on it. No way, not interested type of thing. And he threw it. He was working at a dry cleaner to support him and his wife. And he took the whole novel of Carrie and threw it into the garbage. And he went to work. And his wife went and looked and she says, what's this doing in the garbage? She took it out. She went through and made a bunch of edit changes, and he came home that night and there it is on the desk with all these red marks on it. And he said, what the heck did you do? She said, it's ready to be published. And sure enough, the next publisher he sent it to, it got published. And then we know his claim to fame is forever, right? But again, we tell these stories of me taking 20 years and Stephen King going to give up on himself and everything else. This is part of the process. You know, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Colonel Sanders, he made his first major restaurant at the age of 68 is when he opened up his first major restaurant. He made his first $1 million at 68. So what was going on for 40 years?
Not much.
But he was hustling, right?
Yeah.
What he did for 40 years is he hustled and hustled. He believed in himself. He believed in his product. And at 88, he becomes a billionaire. Now, I don't throw those numbers around to impress people and say, if you do the right thing, you're going to become a millionaire or a billionaire. I don't really equate money with success in life, money with happiness, money with joy. It can affect us or it may not. There's a lot of people, you know, I have clients in Africa that have friends and relatives that live, we'll say, in the bush. They live out of the normal cities. They live really where it's wild. And they'll say they're the happiest people in the world. They have almost nothing. They're always smiling. They're always having a great time. They find sticks and make up their own games. I mean, it's that kind of joy, you know, that we're looking for. But too many of us have got stuck into this society of mass consciousness where we're just doing things because other people told us to do it. We're doing it because our neighbors are doing it. Our family told us to do it. You know, why did I become an attorney? Someone might say, well, my dad was an attorney. Do you enjoy it? I hate it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not where we're at. You know, yeah, you can make $300,000, $500,000 a year as an attorney or whatever it might be. But if you're not enjoying it, that's a complete waste of your life, a complete waste of your time. And we have to remember that this is a very short space of time we have here. You know, if you live to be 100, you're lucky and you're fortunate. But most of the time, the last number of years, we're not really living. You know, we're tied up to tubes, or we're having major health issues or mental issues or whatever it might be. So this is the time to really look in the mirror. You're listening to Kevin and David. All we're asking you to do is to evaluate now and change now. If it needs to be changed, let's start writing. Let's start getting this stuff in action. You've got this shot. If you believe in reincarnation, good for you. I don't know if it's true or not. As a matter of fact, speaking of that, the Dalai Lama, now this is a wild, humble statement from the Dalai Lama. In one of his books, he writes about reincarnation. But this is what he says, which is so shockingly beautiful. He says, in Buddhism, we teach reincarnation, that we do return and we come back in another form. But I can honestly tell you, I'm not sure it's accurate. I can honestly tell you, I'm not sure it's true. We teach it because it's part of our process, but we do not know if it's 100% accurate. I am blown away that the world's leader in Buddhism has so much humility that he can say, what we teach, we believe in, but we can't prove it. We're going to continue to teach it because we believe in it, but we can't prove it. That is in alignment with a very humble man and a very humble philosophy or religion, whatever you want to call it.
I agree. I agree completely. By the way, I wanted to mention this. Have you ever heard of the Sylvester Stallone story about how Rocky came to be?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not. The story is too long to talk about here, but if go Google Sylvester Stallone and Rocky, and you will find a guy. The funniest part is he had to sell his dog so he could eat. So he sold his dog for $50. After the movie came out and he made some money, he went back to get the dog. The guy made him pay $10,000.
That's right. That's so good.
So we're talking with David Essel. We need to take just a really quick break. And I think this is also a valuable break. The breaks that they give me to run for them are really, really good. So pay attention. This could be helpful.
A lifetime of savings can disappear overnight. Millions of dollars are stolen every day from unsuspecting older adults by family members, caregivers, and trusted professionals. If you suspect financial exploitation, call the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1116 or go online to the National Adult Protective Services Association to be connected with help in your area.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And remember, the inheritance you save may be your own. So make sure, because as we get older, some of us are not as aware and stuff. And we need to make sure that nobody comes in to take your parents' money or something like that, or to be fraudulent and stuff like that. So
Kevin,
go ahead.
Kevin, and our senior population is really at risk for phone scam and internet scams.
Yep.
I love that ad. That ad is just beautiful. But I just want to add, on top of what they're showing there, that, healthcare workers and family members and God knows who else can try to take your loved one's money or possessions, but it can also happen via phone and internet. So, really make sure your parents are older, make sure you talk to them about this kind of thing, that, the scams are going on constantly, and help protect them.
I interviewed a gentleman or a lady that was scammed by a gentleman. She thought he was a doctor from England. And turns out that he was a Nigerian sitting on a bed with a bank of phones, and he conned her into loaning money after money, and she ended up losing almost $1 million.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. It can, and she's a smart girl. It can happen to anybody.
It can.
So, by the way, sir, do you ever? I've had this thought lately, because I get to interview Neil Donald Walsh and Gary Zukav and you, and do you recognize who you really are and the impact that you've had on society as a whole?
What a question. No.
It's hard to when you're in your own skin.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that there are people that are listening to this that are going, I remember listening to him on the radio or doing another interview, and he really is a remarkable human being. And you don't look at yourself that way. You look at yourself as, a normal guy. You put your pants on, you go do what you do, but you are a remarkable human being. I just wanted you to know that.
Kevin, thank you so much. That it means a lot. I'm not sure if there's a right answer here, Kevin. I can only go with what feels right to me.
Right.
But I've never been one to look closely at the question you just asked. I've only been a person that wants to keep serving. And I think, and I'm not positive, but I think by having this mindset, I don't get caught up in myself ever. I realize that, I am here and I do have some gifts, and those are incredible gifts that I have been given. And I understand that. And I am appreciative, and I will never take any of my gifts for granted. But I hear the validation. I get emails and text messages, you changed my life. And, my God, when I was in Seattle on Cairo FM for 10 years, that was from 1990 to 2000. And on Facebook last week, I got 3 former listeners who still live in Seattle that commented on a topic I had put there and mentioned, how much they loved the show. We were in 300 cities. I think humility in my family was always such an important tool that we learn how to maximize. That has probably saved me in many ways from being arrogant or condescending or thinking that I'm better than someone else. I think my upbringing, even though I was a tough kid, my addiction started at 12 with drugs and alcohol. I had a mom that never made me feel unlovable, Kevin, which is incredible. When you have a 12-year-old freaking addict, and now she would get pissed off at me and she would, punish me and do everything else a mom is supposed to do. But she never made me feel unlovable. There's so many things that I'm seeing now from my childhood that, of course, you can't see in your childhood because you can't see anything. You don't know squat as a kid.
Right.
And a lot of 50, 60, and 70-year-olds still I don't understand, the gift they were given by having a parent or parents, not being raised in an orphanage. There's so many things of gratitude we can talk about. But I think a big one is humility. And it's just incredible what you asked. And I think it's making me step back a little bit because, this morning I finished a session with a gentleman that I helped save their marriage. And the wife and he were on the call last week. And this was the first time she was on the call. I was only working with her. And she said, I was ready to divorce him. I can't believe what you've done to help turn him around. And and then I had my last session with him today. And, he said, hey, before we leave, I have to tell you something. And he said what you just said. He said, do you realize, the deep impact you've had not only on my life, but on all these other people? And, I sat there and I looked at him and I said, go ahead. And he said, well, I just think it's important. He said, you're so humble. And I hope you do realize it because I want you to feel as good about yourself as I feel about myself after working with you. And I just looked and said, my God, thank you. And he said, I said to my wife beforehand, I didn't know if I wanted to spend the money on David Essel or not. And he said, I could have paid you double and it would have been worth it. And so, Kevin, your question is coming off the heels of that. And it's blowing me away because 2 times today now, I have been lifted immensely. Your words lift me immensely, Kevin. I respect you. I admire you. Every time I've been on the show with you, it's been nothing but bliss and joy. Your attitude is always so freaking powerful, positive, as your title of your show says. So for you to say that, I just got to tell you how much I appreciate it. And, for people that are with us right now, I want to thank you for taking the time. If something I said benefits you, great. If something I said will benefit you in 20 years when you remember it, great. But just really remember this. Each and every one of us are here for a purpose and a reason. When we don't have that purpose and reason, life can be really hard. Life is hard anyway. But I want you to find that purpose and reason. I want you to find that joy. If it's only part-time, there's this commercial that I just love. And it's, I don't even know what the commercial is selling, Kevin. But it's a woman who volunteers her time at a bunny rescue ranch. And I look at that and I say, my gosh, what a beautiful experience. This woman is volunteering her time to help animals that have been abused. And so you don't have to do your purpose full time. Your purpose might be part time. You know, my younger brother, Terry, who I just love to death, he's still up in Syracuse, New York. And, you know, for several years, every Sunday morning, he was up at 7 a.m. going to an abused dog shelter. And it's a different kind of a shelter than the one you'd go to get a dog to adopt. These are dogs that are shipped up from the South. Most of them have been chained out in backyards. They have no love. They have, and so they're very challenging dogs. And my brother gets up at 7 a.m. or before 7. He's at the shelter at 7, you know, for 4 or 5 hours. And that has become a purpose of his. You know, he owns his own business. He runs his own business. But his purpose really, you know, is these dogs. So don't think doing something as a volunteer doesn't fulfill the whole as being your purpose in life. And don't think that not getting paid but doing something you love isn't part of your purpose. It is. You know, and maybe it's just taking beautiful pictures with your iPhone and posting them on social media so that we have good stuff up there. Maybe that's your purpose, is to look at, you know, taking pictures of plants and animals and beautiful things and reminding people that the world is a really great place to be, even in the insanity we're in. I'm just throwing ideas out there to get you thinking, because the greatest gift in the world is to give yourself the gift of purpose. That's the greatest gift you could give yourself.
You know, and I've said this before, and it bears repeating. First of all, I want to thank you for your heartfelt honesty, and secondly, one of the reasons why you are able to be humble is because you recognize this isn't about David. The show is not about Kevin. The show is about creating the space for people to live a better life, and that's what you are about. And so it's not about David this, and I'm so cool, and now look at me. It's about, how can I be of service? And as far as anybody listening to this, you can be of service to your fellow man by giving the cashier at the grocery store a smile.
Yes.
And making them feel like they're an actual human being that has value.
Yes.
And you can do that with anyone at any time, and it doesn't cost you anything. And as Neil Donald Walsh said in Conversations with God, Book 1, if you want to attain true happiness, give happiness to someone else.
Amen. Love it, Kevin.
And so I love what you do. I love who you are. We've just got a couple of minutes left. I want to make sure that people know, because there's somebody out there that the universe is saying to them, I need to talk to that man. And so I want them to be able to, so get a pen and paper out, ladies and gentlemen, so that you can write down this information, because it might not be important today, but tomorrow it might be. And I want you to have that information so that you can act on it when the time is right. David?
Perfect, Kevin. Thank you. Yes, the website is so easy to remember. TalkDavid.com. It's all I do. 12 hours a day, I am talking. So the website name is appropriate. TalkDavid.com. It's so easy to remember. When you go there, remember there's 5 books, five books absolutely free. A couple are audibles and the other ones are print. Go ahead and grab those. There's a link to our YouTube channel that has over 2,000 free videos on motivation, success, relationships, addiction. So you can get that all from the website. We have a blog with over 250, 300 articles. You can read through those. You can have a 20-minute free session with me on the phone. You're really wanting to change and you know that it's time. Oh my God, I'm your guy. Let's work together. There's nothing more exciting than helping people change their lives. And you can sign up for that at talkdavid.com. And then if you want to work with me, I mean, there's tons of programs there. We have some inflation specials because I know some people are really hurting with this inflation. So there's some of the programs that have been discounted. Everything is at talkdavid.com. There's so much free stuff there. It's going to blow your mind. You may just park there for a couple of years.
You might, and it will be 2 years very well spent, I must say.
Thank you, Kevin.
David Essel has been our guest. Go to his website. You'll spend a lot of time there. And I just want to again thank you. My heart is full of gratitude for you and the work that you do. And I wish you a long life, much success, and that we'll continue continue to do this together.
I cannot wait to be back with you, Kevin. I always have a blast. Thank you for your beautiful words, and keep lifting this country and this world now. We need you doing this. Absolutely.
Well, just like you, my friend, I have no choice.
That's right.
So thank you very much, sir. And with that, we got to wrap it up. So thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin@kmmedia.pro.